Hi guys, so today we're in part 3 of our tutorial on Power Automate, and by the end of this video we'll look at adding a tracker to our flow and also some planner actions at the end of this part 3. So if you've not watched part 1 or part 2, then go and have a look at those. They're in the description below if you've not watched them. And there's a starting video as well which goes through how the flow actually works and what it's going to do at the end. And it's worth watching that first as well. I'm Gavin Jones, I'm Transformation Manager for a Fortune 500 company in my day job, and all the tips we've got on YouTube have come out of real life examples. Remember to click the subscribe button and the bell icon if you haven't already to get notified every time I release a new video. We've got a new video on Teams coming out every Tuesday. And if you want our training deck, either to train other people in your organisation or just to get all the tips for Teams all written down in one place, then click the free download button in the description below. So without further ado, let's go on and finish our flow. Okay, so we're actually going to go and do our planner actions first because that's the easiest thing, so we'll get that done and out of the way. I'm trying to make this video a bit shorter than the last two, although it might still run to the same length. Didn't intend those to be as long as they are. But let's go on and just add a planner action. So assuming we've come all the way down the flow, it's the same one we started in parts 1 or 2. So we're going to have a look at those if you don't know what we're doing right now. So it's starting approval flow. If it's yes or no, it posts an approval or rejection back into Teams with the person that's requested that approval. And what we're going to do now is that, presumably they've got some sort of approval to then get approved to then go do some sort of action. So we're going to add a planner action. We've already got a planner in our team. So we're going to pick the planner step and we're going to create a task. So the group ID is going to be the same as our team. The plan ID, we've got a few on here. I think we called it testing planner. Let me just double check that. Yeah, that's the one that's most recently pinned that we used in another video. If you don't know about planner, I'll link that in the description below as well. It's worth checking out how to use planner for meeting actions. So pick up testing planner, and then the title of the task, we can use some of the dynamic content. So we'll say, depends what the action is going to be, I guess, once that flows, once that approval flow is finished. So we could just say take action on, and then pick up what can we pick it from? I'm not sure it's going to let us pick from when a file's created because it's too far up the tree. It does let us do that. Cool. So we're going to pick up the name. So take it on that. You can pick which bucket to put it into. So we're just going to put it into to do. And then if you want to do a due date, a dynamic due date, we can add another step in here. Cool, then we're going to pick add to time. In the date time one, add to time. So the base time we're going to pick up is when the approval's finished. So I think it's response date. Looks good. We'll add in maybe 3 days, and then we'll give people 3 days to do their action once the approval's been complete. So if we go back into the create a task, then we can pick the due date from the add time, just that calculated time. And then if we want to, we can then assign that to the person that did the very first creation, which is going to be, I think, the modified person of modified by email. and that's going to create the planner task for them. If you wanted to add some other stuff into that planner action, like the description, then you need to actually add another action to that, because there's no option in that create a task step. And then we're going to update. So you can update a task, which I guess is to do with the status and things. We're going to update task details to add some more details. So the task ID is going to be the one above. Into custom value maybe. Here we go. Yeah, so we wanted to get that dynamic box up. I'm not sure I didn't pop up straight away. But we want to pick up the ID of the task above, so we can link those. And then description, I guess we don't know what the action is in our imaginary scenario, so we can just put in some more description like this was approved, so go and take the necessary actions needed. Cool, and then if you wanted to, you can even put a link back to the file from the very start. So we'll go and pick up the alias, which is going to be the name of that file, and the resource link. I guess we're going to pick up the link to item. Oh, cool. Not sure that I didn't pop up again straight away. If we search for link, we've got link to item, which is in when a file's created. That's the one we want. And then we need to tell it what is the type of file it's going to be, and all of ours are going to be Excel. So that's handy. So then that's going to add a link to our planner action. It's going to put some more description in. So which is, if I just jump back to planner, we haven't got any description in this one, but it's going to populate that field. It's going to populate the due date to 3 days after the time that the approval was done, and it's going to assign it to the person that requested that file. And then that thing that we've just done at the end is going to add an attachment with a link back to the existing file and where it's saved in the team. So that's the planner bit done. Let's just save it and see if it's going to work. If we do a test using an old trigger. Cool, so it's just popped up on my phone. I'm just going to switch into Teams. You might have noticed I've got some more things down the side now, so you can now pin things to the side of your sidebar, whatever it's supposed to be called. And we can even, you pin them to the side by clicking on those 3 dots, finding an app that you've sort of installed for personal use, which is ones that pop up in these 3 dots. Right click and pin. So we'll pin flow. It's not shown at the side, I actually pinned quite a few, which is why it's now just sort of jumped up to the top. You can see that popped up in the bottom right saying flows pinged me. And if I jump into flow and into approvals, we can approve our imaginary flow that's just come through 56 seconds ago. We'll approve that. Put a comment in if we want to. Approved by me. Confirm. Cool, so that's all sent successfully. And if we jump back into our team, then you can see that our planner action's now there, nice and good looking little action. So it's got a Excel attachment to it. It's got the take action that we put in. If we click into the card, it's got the description populated due date's populated 3 days after the approval was done, which is 3 days after we've just done it now, and it's assigned it to me because I'm the person that submitted the file, but whoever submitted that initial one would get their plan action back. So that's looking pretty cool, and then anyone that has then done the action can just click tick, and like we did before, it's got a flow saying it's been submitted successfully, and it's posted back that we've approved it, although we didn't bother formatting that one in the last video, but that's why it looks a bit different. But yeah, saying it's posting back to say it's been approved and you need to do something now as well. Okay, so the final thing is just to do our tracker, which is hopefully then relatively simple. You can see how we've built a lot of complexity into our flow, starting quite simple and then adding extra things in, which is why it looks quite complicated when you first look at it from scratch. If you just go straight in, actually it's relatively easy to just build on top of functionality. So in the first video we just did a very simple workflow. Obviously our real life workflow that we went through in the very first video, which is in the description below, has got lots of approval steps. It's got 4 or 5 levels of approval which all branch out, but it's just repeating things down. And the same with the tracker. So we wanted to push stuff into a SharePoint list tracker. The reason we did that is that we found trying to update trying to update an Excel file to keep track of things, the flow kept locking itself out of the same file, and it just wasn't robust enough to use as a business process, because every time it locked itself out, you'd have to wait 10 minutes, then we'd have to have the flow would have to be really complicated to handle. Oh, it's locked itself out, try again. Whilst it's doing that, someone else might have done another submission, and that's going to also then try and ping it and lock it out for a bit more. So we ended up doing a SharePoint list, which is actually a lot more robust. So, like we did in video 2, we're just going to try and jump to the SharePoint view of the team. We're going to go to Site Contents. And we're going to create a new list. And we're going to call this one Approval Tracker. I can type today. And this one you might want to show in the site navigation, which is just that it puts it in this sidebar here, because I guess it's more like a live tracker of you want people to see it. So we'll keep it in the sidebar. And then eventually we'll go and pin it into the team as well, so you're seeing everything come back into the team. You don't need to share the SharePoint site with anyone really. And to set up our list, I guess we want to pull in everything that we want to keep track of. So at the moment we've only got one approval step. We have got our template, and if we go into the template, we might find some things we want to put in. So if we do a list column for each of these categories, so title we probably want to keep, and we'll put the Excel document title as the title of the list. ID we probably want to see, like we did in the other one we did. We probably want some other columns that are already there. So if we do created date is handy. If we do, yeah, that's probably it. Just create a date for now. Apply that. We'll drag some of these around. So we want ID before title. Created there's fine. And then if we add some other ones, so single line of text is going to be our brand. We'll have one for product, which single line of text, product. If we do, I'll just do down to volume because obviously it's quite he does the same thing. And you might have noticed that I'm doing a single line of text for volume. I don't know if it's still the case now, but it is the case when I tried it and set up the real life one last year, is that if I created a column in SharePoint list as a number, which is a number, this one here, it wouldn't let me add any dynamic content to it in Flow. But if I set it up as text, set the flow up, saved it, and then went back to the SharePoint list and changed it to be a number, then that would work because it's already pulling in the dynamic content. So a little bit like we did last video, in that we had to pick a file and then it let you add dynamic content further down the flow with picking a real life or a saved file, versus picking a dynamic content for a file. It doesn't know then what's in the file. Seemed to be something similar to that, but it was odd that it wouldn't let me do that. But that's a little workaround if you've got any numbers that you want to add in. And then I'll just add like one for progress, just so you can see how I did that, although it's going to be pretty simple in our little example. Cool, so we'll save our view. And then we've got now got a list set up to be populated whenever we submit something. So if I just go back into the team, and we can go and pin that SharePoint list. So if we pick a new tab, SharePoint, it's going to scan our library, go onto lists, and the approval tracker test is one we've just done. So if we add our new tracker and bring it a bit further over to the left, you can now see we've got a really nice looking list right in Teams, and you can expand it and do all the same stuff you would do in SharePoint, and it's all ready to populate. So what we need to do now is go back into our flow and then add some intermediate steps to go and update that list as we're going through the automation. So ideally you would do get row for each key bit of information you wanted to pull out, and then all of those get things that you're pulling out of Excel would then go into create your SharePoint list item. We're not going to bother doing that in our example because it's just the same thing repeated, but we would then add an action after we pull the information out of Excel and go and create an item. So if we look into SharePoint, and it's create that we want to do create item. And you see how easy this is now. So once we've set the list up, we just need to go and pick the site or the team that it's in, pick the list name, and it's going to bring back all of the fields that we've just set up in our list. So it's just got one as required because I think we didn't set these fields up to be required, although we could do. In title, we're going to pick the title of the file that's created. So if we scroll down to when a file is created and pick up something like name. Name sounds good. Put name in there. And then for all these ones, we're then going to pick the dynamic content out of our get a row. And then you might have found the same issue that we had originally. If we look now through the dynamic content, we're probably not going to see anything coming back from Excel. So we need to do the same thing that we did originally, which is get rid of this dynamic content here, which is picking the file from the very first submission into a folder, which is dynamic. We need to delete that. We need to go and find our sort of static template where it's saved. Which we put in escalation folder. And what do we call it? Test approval template. So we pick that back, keep all the table and everything same. Now, if we click in brand, we'll get a now dynamic content from that get a row thing. And then if we need to update any of these, we would pull back another get a row with information, and then pull that into dynamic content for product, volume, anything we want to add into that tracker. You can then mix dynamic things with just typing stuff in, so not to overcomplicate it. So I guess once we've submitted it, we're saying it's 50% through. So I'm just going to add that to 0.5, and then afterwards I'm going to go and format that column to be a number, and more specifically a percentage, so we can keep track of the progress. So that's our first creation of the item, which is great. So that's going to populate our SharePoint list with something there. I'm just going to do one branch so you can see all the stuff that you need. So if the response is yes, we want to go and update the list before we post back, and then create something there. We can't actually add something above, which I'm hoping gets added in soon. You can obviously add an action below, you can add one in the middle, but you can't add one above. So you need to add one in the middle and then drag it above. So first thing we need to do to update that item is first to get the item back, because if we just did update item, you might find that it's not pulling dynamic content from above. Hopefully that makes more sense if I just show you. So if we do SharePoint, we want to update the item that we've got above that we just pulled back. Let's drag that above here. If that's going to work, drag that down there. Cool. So if we want to update that item, depends how far down the tree you are of approval steps as well. So it might work in this limited example, but I'll show you what I had to do a larger one, if that's useful for you. We're going to pull back the approval tracker, test, and the ID. So we can actually pull back the ID here. So you see that's where it says create. So we want to make sure which ID we're pulling back. So we've got get item, when a file is created, these are actually these two up here. When a file's, and you should rename these so that you know and you can follow more easily when you're adding things in. When a file's created is when that's our trigger when we kick it off. Get items, actually a different SharePoint list, that's getting the list of approvers. And the list we're interested in is create item, which does actually appear here. If you've gone too far down the condition tree, or something's wrapped in an apply to each box, which it might do depending on what you've added in, then you might not be able to pull that ID there. It might just be blank. It's not giving you any dynamic content from this step here. So if that's the case, all you need to do is get the information back from that list first, and then it'll allow you to add the ID in. So just to show you what that looks like, obviously we don't need to do it now, but again you would get an item above this one, but we need to add it below and then move it. And we want to get, I think it's just get item. So we would move this one down here. And remember, this is only if the dynamic content doesn't appear. So obviously you don't, this is a unnecessary step if it does. So if you do get item, apologies, I do remember why you're doing this, because we want to fill in some of the content from values that we've already put in above. And this is useful if you want to keep track of comments and things. So if we add a comment into one of our lists, it's going to then wrap it in a apply to each. It's all coming back to me now, so apologies. So we're going to pick the ID of create item, which is our first list there. We're going to pick the ID of get item 2, which is this one. And this is why I should rename them all, so it's less likely. And then for title, I think if we didn't add this get item here, we wouldn't be able to bring back the title from this create item, because there we just created it. We haven't pulled in the data that we've just created, if that makes sense. So this one is then pulling the information back so that we can then reuse it, so we're not typing the same thing in each time, although we do need to add the same dynamic content each time, so it's still slightly tedious, although is obviously saves a lot of time when you've finished doing all of this flow. So from get item 2, we're going to bring back the name. From get item 2, we're going to bring back the brand, and then say that we'd added in all of these other steps in the first one. You then need to go and add, well, I want the same value back to sort of update and overwrite it. So we just assuming that we added all these in at the start, and then progress, now it's going to be 100% done because we've approved it and it's done. If you had multiple steps down, you could just keep a track yourself of how far through the process you think it is and just update the percentage yourself. That's how we did the percentage tracker that you'll see in the very, very first video. So I make the progress as 1, and then everything else is the same. So if we save that and do a little test, I'm hoping that our flow is now pretty much complete. And if you want to replicate all these things, you have to sort of do a reflection of these in every step. So if no, obviously you're going to get the item, update it with the progress, whether it's been approved or not. The comments we didn't add in actually, but if we say we picked one of these fields for comments, you can pull back the comments from the start and approval, and to make sure your comments get appended to each step of the approval. So if assuming you've got multiple steps of approval, so that goes to your manager and then her manager and then his manager, to pull back all those comments, you just do like a sort of iterative loop. So you would pull back to say, the latest comments are, say, response date, then responses approver name, to say this date, this person. And you see, as soon as I did the responses, it's then wrapped this in and apply to each box, because you could have more than one response potentially. So Flow just does that for you. And then add in whatever you want. But say you want then to put in all the other comments that have happened. Obviously there's only going to be one in our flow so far, but you could then add a few line breaks and then pull in the comments. Well, obviously we're just in the volume field, so just imagine that that's called comments. So we're going to pull in the volume field from the get item 2. So apologies for not creating your comments section up front, but then you can see that's going to pull in the latest comments from our approval step, the latest approval step, and then add in the comments that are already in the SharePoint list. So if this was like 5 down a approval tree, you can see that it's going to add in, like, this is the first one, so it's going to add the latest approval and the responses. Then it might kick off another approval step, and then that's going to add in the latest responses, and then add on, pull back from the list already there, what the comments are so far. So it's reading those and then updating it with the latest comments as well. So you're sort of getting a time-stamped list of comments. Hopefully that makes sense. Apologies for not doing a comments section. But that's how you would do comments there. So I'm just going to delete those out for now. And let's save it and do a little test. And let's use the same data. So we should be able to go back in and check that our list has been updated. We'll see it in Teams, all of the approval success and failure, and notifying that it's gone okay is going to Teams. So basically we're doing everything in Teams now using our approval process, and even the people that are approving it can approve without leaving Teams by using the Flow app in their sidebar. So great use of pulling everything back together. So we've got our approval submitted, and if we go into our tracker, you can then see that we've got all of our tracker list updated here now. So then last bit, just to make it look nice, was we in our SharePoint view, we can go and change this progress. If we edit it and make it a number now that we've done the flow, and we can change it to show as a percentage, number of decimal places, maybe, well, 0, because we're not going to add any. And if we save that, it gives you a message saying you might lose data, blah, blah, but it's going to be fine. So now it's changed to a 50%, and then to make it look nice, we can even do some data bars. And if we, just edit the maximum value, so it's always going to be up to 100%, and save that. Then we've got a nice little progress bar that'll update here, and if we just save our view, we can then also see that in Teams as well. And if you want in any other formatting like you see on the very first video, that was just Googling some JSON that you can just copy and paste into that advanced editor that you just looked at very briefly in SharePoint and just make it look nice for you. So that's the end of our 3-part series on Power Automate and Flow. So we looked at automating approvals, get everything back into Teams, and using Teams as a hub for all of our approvals, so people don't have to leave Teams to do their approval job, basically. So hopefully you like that. Remember to give it a thumbs up if you did. Let us know in the comments if there's anything we missed or anything else you want to know about Teams or approval flows. And remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon. We've got a new video on Teams coming out every Tuesday. And remember, if you haven't got the deck yet with all the tips for Teams on it, all in one place, then hit the free download link in the description below. And lastly, remember at MeeTime, we think that there's still a big opportunity for meetings to be a lot better in a lot of organizations. If you've got a meeting timer in the iOS App Store, search for MeeTime or visit www.meetimeapps.com for any more information. Thanks for watching this far, and see you in the next video.